On a Monday in April 1985, Linda Sherman's car appeared in the short-term parking lot of Lambert Airport in St. Louis. The hood was locked. The trunk, open, was empty. Linda was 27 years old, had a 9-year-old daughter, and according to her husband, she had simply left with another man. 5 years later, a skull was found under a bush 20 minutes from her home. The case of Linda Sherman has been classified as an unsolved homicide for nearly 4 decades. The main suspect died without being charged, and the complete police file, according to the cooperative that absorbed the original agency, can no longer be located. Linda was not only murdered, according to evidence. The system is actively losing her case. There is something in this story that continues to raise unanswered questions. Someone constructed a scene designed to make it seem like Linda had left voluntarily, and for almost 40 years, that construction has stood, protected by silences, missing files, and witnesses with conflicts of interest that no one thoroughly investigated. To understand what happened in April 1985, one must first understand who Linda Sherman was. Linda was 27 years old. She lived with her husband Don and her daughter Patty on Monroe Avenue in St. Louis County, Missouri. She worked the night shift at the National Personnel Records Center, a federal archive of the United States government. It was a responsible job with fixed hours and very marked routines. She wore a chain with the number 76, the year she graduated. Patty, her daughter, was 9 years old. Every morning, without exception, Linda took her to school. She was not the type of mother who delegated that routine. She was the type of mother for whom that morning journey was a ritual, an implicit promise repeated every day. The marriage with Don Sherman was fractured. The couple attended sessions with a therapist identified in the file as Dr. W. Don, suspected that Linda was cheating on him. That suspicion, according to those who knew them later, consumed Don. Linda's last documented morning followed her usual routine. She prepared breakfast for Patty. She took her to school at 8:15 in the morning on Monday, April 22, 1985. Then she went to work her night shift at the Federal Archive. Don, according to his own account, left Patty at her grandmother's house at 3:45 in the afternoon of that same day. After that, Linda Sherman disappeared. Don did not report the disappearance the next day. His explanation was that Linda had already disappeared before. He waited until Wednesday, April 24th to make the formal report, 48 hours after the last sign of his wife. It was Linda's sister, Fran, and her brother-in-law, Sam Miller, who initiated the search before the police acted. They found the yellow Neen Teen 71 VW Beetle in the short-term parking lot of Lambert Airport on Friday, April 26. When they arrived at the car, according to their later statements, they expected to find Linda's body in the trunk. The trunk was open. It was empty. The car's hood, on the other hand, was locked. From the family home, a suitcase and Linda's clothes had also disappeared. That, along with the car at the airport, constructed a clear narrative. A woman who packed, who left, who chose not to return. But Fran and Sam did not believe it. And there is a very concrete reason for that disbelief. Linda Sherman did not leave her daughter. Every morning, without fail, she took her to school. A woman who abandons her life does not maintain that routine until the last moment and then disappear without a call, without a note, without a goodbye to Patty. The scene at the airport said one thing. Linda's life told a completely different story, and that contradiction is the heart of everything that came afterward. The formal investigation began late, very late. Don Sherman waited until Wednesday, April 24th, to report his wife's disappearance. 48 hours after Linda stopped showing signs of life. His justification, as noted in the file, was that Linda had disappeared before. There is no documentation to support that claim. The police accepted it without further questioning. While Don waited, Fran and Sam Miller were already searching. Linda's sister didn't need anyone to tell her that something was wrong. She knew her sister. And a woman who takes her daughter to school every morning without fail doesn't just disappear without a word. It was they who found the yellow 1971 VW Beetle. It was in the short-term parking lot of Lambert Airport on Friday, April 26. 4 days after the last time anyone saw Linda alive, Fran and Sam approached the car expecting the worst. They expected to find Linda's body in the trunk. The trunk was open. It was empty. The hood, on the other hand, was locked from the inside. That asymmetry is important. An open and empty trunk can mean many things. A hood locked from the inside of an abandoned car is much harder to explain without a second person being involved. A suitcase and clothes belonging to Linda had also disappeared from the family home. For the authorities, the picture was coherent. A dissatisfied woman, in her marriage in couples therapy, recently seen with another man who finally decided to leave. The car at the airport reinforced that interpretation. The clothes and suitcase completed it. The official narrative of voluntary departure was beginning to take shape. But there were details that this narrative could not explain. Linda wore a chain with the number 76, the year of her graduation. It was a piece she wore constantly. It was not found among her belongings, nor was it reported that she wore it to the airport, and Patty, her 9-year-old daughter, did not receive any calls. No messages, no goodbyes. For anyone who knew Linda Sherman, that was impossible. The investigation, however, took another path. A key witness was neighbor Vicky. According to her statement, she had seen Linda in the company of a man. That testimony directly fueled the theory of voluntary abandonment and diverted attention from Don Sherman in the early weeks. What the police did not know or did not investigate with sufficient rigor at that time was that Vicky had a romantic relationship with Don Sherman. A neighbor, who was also the husband's girlfriend, claimed to have seen the missing wife with another man. The conflict of interest could not have been more direct. The lead investigator, identified in records as Lieutenant Webb, did focus his suspicions on Don relatively early on. He requested that he submit to a polygraph test. Don Sherman, with advice from his lawyer, declined it. Refusing a polygraph is not evidence of guilt in legal terms, but it is also not the behavior of a husband who simply wants to find his wife. Webb then organized a more direct operation. A woman was equipped with a hidden microphone to try to obtain a confession from Don Sherman during a conversation. The results of that attempt were not documented in the available records. There is no record that it produced actionable evidence. An anonymous letter reached investigators at some point in the process. It was sent to the FBI lab for analysis. No useful results were produced. Each line of investigation hit a wall. In the following years, Don Sherman began trying to remarry. Linda was still officially listed as missing. There was still no body. There was still no closed case. And Don was already planning his next stage. On Thursday, June 28, 1990, a skull was found under a bush in the gardens of the Casa Gallardo restaurant in Bridgeton, Missouri. Bridgeton is about 20 minutes from Bonita Park, the area where the Sherman family lived. The discovery was documented. The identity of the remains was never publicly confirmed. There is no record of the authorities formally closing that finding linking it to Linda Sherman. 5 years after her disappearance, a part of someone appeared 20 minutes from her home, and the system could not, or did not want to, close that distance. There is a moment in this case when the investigation stopped moving toward the truth and began to go in circles. It was not a single event. It was an accumulation of decisions that, viewed together, draw a pattern impossible to ignore. The gun was one of those moments. At some point in the investigation, according to later news reports, a gun was found in the heating duct of the Sherman house. Not in a drawer, not in a closet, in the heating duct, a place that requires intention to access. The authorities did not publicly establish a direct connection between that weapon and Linda's disappearance. There is no record of it being identified as the murder weapon or generating any charges of any kind. But the finding was also not convincingly dismissed. A gun hidden in the heating duct of a house whose resident disappeared is not a minor detail. It is exactly the kind of evidence that in a robust process would have triggered a thorough investigation of the family home. In this case, it was documented and filed away without visible consequences. That is the first sign that the system was already failing. The second was slower and more devastating. Throughout the 80s and 90s, the investigation gradually lost momentum. The investigators who knew the file aged, some died. The lawyer who advised Don Sherman passed away. Don Sherman himself died before any charges were filed against him. Each death closed a door that could never be opened again. And then, what may be the deepest failure of all occurred. The Vanita Park Police Department, the agency that originally handled the case, was absorbed about a decade ago by the North County Police Cooperative. In that process of institutional transition, the complete file of the Linda Sherman case disappeared. The cooperative, when consulted, said it could not locate the files, not a part, the complete file. An unsolved homicide case should not be able to go missing. Evidence preservation protocols exist precisely to prevent that from happening. And yet, the file of Linda Sherman is not there. Jurisdiction over the case is currently unclear. No one knows for sure who is responsible for investigating it today. Linda Sherman disappeared on April 22, 1985, and the system that should have searched for her ended up losing her twice. First, when it did not act in time, and then when it literally lost the documents that recorded her existence as a victim. That is not accidental incompetence. It is the kind of failure that erases people from history. First hypothesis. Don Sherman killed Linda on the night of April 22, 1985, or in the immediately following hours, and staged a scene to make it seem like she had left voluntarily. The circumstantial evidence supporting this hypothesis is considerable. Don waited 48 hours to report her disappearance. He declined a polygraph test with legal counsel. The testimony of Vicky, the neighbor who claimed to have seen Linda with another man, came from someone who had a romantic relationship with Don himself. The missing clothes and suitcase from the home could have been removed by anyone with access to the house. The VW trunk locked from the inside suggests that someone else moved that car to the airport, and a gun was found hidden in the heating duct of the family home, although with no proven link to the crime. Don Sherman was never formally charged. He died before the system could or wanted to reach him. Second hypothesis. Linda Sherman did leave voluntarily that night, but something went wrong after her departure. Under this reading, she would have planned a temporary or permanent departure, taking clothes and a suitcase, leaving her car at the airport as part of an escape plan. The problem with this hypothesis is that it does not withstand scrutiny of the known facts. Linda took Patty to school that morning, following her usual routine. She left no note or message for her daughter. There was no subsequent contact of any kind. And 5 years later, a skull appeared, 20 minutes from her home. Although with no confirmed formal identification, a woman fleeing does not leave traces that end 20 minutes from the home she supposedly abandoned. There is something in this case that does not fit neatly into either hypothesis. The disappearance of the complete file, the deaths of all key actors before any charges were filed, the lack of formal identification of the remains found in 1990. All of this creates a zone of uncertainty that time has made almost impossible to resolve. What can be firmly stated, based on the available evidence, is that the narrative of voluntary flight was constructed with too much efficiency and accepted with too much ease. Linda Sherman was 27 years old. She had a 9-year-old daughter. She had a routine, a chain, with the number 76, and a sister who knew her well enough to sense that something was wrong from the very first moment. That familial certainty was never enough for the system to act in accordance with what the case demanded. The file of the Linda Sherman case no longer exists in any accessible institutional archive. The Vanita Park Police Department, the agency that conducted the original investigation, was absorbed by the North County Police Cooperative about a decade ago. When access to the complete file was requested, the cooperative responded that it could not locate it. It was not formally destroyed. It was not transferred. It simply disappeared, according to the available records. This documentary loss is not a minor detail. It is the difference between a case that can be reopened and one that cannot. Without a file, there is no chain of custody over the physical evidence. Without a chain of custody, any modern forensic analysis faces almost insurmountable legal obstacles. The case of Linda Sherman is not only unsolved, it is being erased by time and institutional negligence. The current jurisdiction over the case is, according to available reports, unclear. No one has formally claimed responsibility for continuing it. No one has been arrested. No one has been convicted. Don Sherman died without facing any charges related to his wife's disappearance. That is a statement that requires no embellishment. The gun found in the heating duct of the house was never formally linked to the crime. The attempted confession through a hidden microphone did not produce a result that could be used legally, according to what the file documented before it was lost. The anonymous note sent to the FBI lab did not generate useful evidence. Every lead that investigators tried to follow ended in a dead end. The skull found on June 28, 1990, under a bush at the Casa Gallardo restaurant, 20 minutes from the house where Linda lived, was never publicly identified as her remains. That pending identification is one of the most significant gaps in this case. By 1990, forensic techniques existed that would have allowed progress. The fact that it has not been publicly confirmed or ruled out suggests a failure in the process, not a lack of technology. What is documented, and that no disappearance of files can erase, is this: Linda Sherman was 27 years old. She took her daughter Patty to school every morning. That last morning, Monday, April 22, 1985, she did it just like always. And after that, no one saw her alive again. Her sister Fran knew from the beginning that something was wrong. The family began the search before the police did. They found the yellow VW Beetle in the Lambert Airport parking lot because no one else was looking for it with the same urgency. That image of a family searching alone for what the system took time to recognize is perhaps the most accurate summary of how this case was handled from the start. If anyone has information about the disappearance of Linda Sherman, they can contact the North County Police Cooperative in St. Louis County, Missouri. The case remains officially classified as an unsolved homicide. Patty Sherman grew up without her mother. That has no expiration date. This show is made by Obo Media.